Okay, we are live, but we got to let it breathe just for a moment here, gang. We'll bring on Facebook, get things cooking. Can't wait. Yo, where's my. That's weird. I got to reconnect the Broncos Facebook group, the super fans. They're out tonight. Bummer. They just like disappeared from the list of options, but and unfortunately, I think Scott, I'm the only one that can connect that. So it's all right though. It's only for one night. And we are good. Welcome in, everybody. It is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. And with me, as always, my fellow football priest and partner in crime. You know him, you love him, Zack Kelberman. Zack, we are inching ever closer to the NFL draft here on Sunday evening. Of course, it's kicking off Thursday night, and we can't wait. But more and more info seems to be leaking as we do get closer to the draft, including, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, the news in the wake of course, Courtland Sutton choosing to skip the voluntary OTAs. I want to emphasize voluntary. The Broncos claim that they're getting calls on him on the trade inquiry side of things, but that they're not looking to move him. What do you think the truth of the matter is?
Hang on one second. I don't know.
Uh-oh, technical difficulty. Stand by.
Okay, that was an ad. That was YouTube. That's my fault. I take. Chad, I'm. You said it best. We can't wait for the draft to get here, and it's because of all the speculation, not just with who they might pick at quarterback, but the players like Courtland Sutton, like Garrett Bowles, who could be with the team, could not be with the team. We just all want some clarity, and I think the Broncos are in a holding pattern. They might be inclined to move him if they get a good enough offer, but if they don't, like they didn't last trade deadline, they might be inclined to say, listen, he can help out a quarterback more so than a fifth round pick could. So it's all going to come down to the draft and how the board falls for receiver needy teams.
I don't know, man. Like, if the best they could get for a significantly younger Jerry Jeudy, and albeit a less historically productive Jerry Jeudy, was a couple of mid to late round picks. Courtland Sutton, I mean, outside of the slim, in my opinion, possibility of him being like a sweetener and some kind of blockbuster trade up, he's worth more to you on the roster than five or, especially with the contract. He's not happy with the contract. He's set to make $13 million this year in a salary, but Zack, only $2 million of that is guaranteed. The Broncos could make him happy by increasing some of the guarantees, and it's no skin off their nose, although, it does make him a little bit less flexible if they did want to cut him or even trade him later, depending. But still, I think that a wide receiver one caliber X guy at $13 million, that's worth more to you right now than like a sixth round pick or a fifth round pick or even a pair, fifth and a sixth like the Broncos got for Jeudy, unless I'm misremembering that.
I think you made the most important point that I forgot about, so I'm glad you brought it up. They could be waiting to see if they could make a trade offer for a quarterback, and in that package, like you mentioned, Courtland Sutton could be the sweetener, a la Shelby Harris or Drew Lock in the Russell Wilson trade. So they are really, I think, waiting to see how the draft goes, whether they can trade up for a quarterback, whether a receiver needy team comes calling in, and how much juice they can squeeze from a potential offer. I wouldn't move him, Chad, for anything less than a third round pick. Now, will they get a third round pick? I'm not so sure.
For a guy, Courtland Sutton, who's, what is he going? 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So he's going into year 7. He's only 28. Like, the Broncos, when they extended him, and by the way, I'm re-angling my mic here. Tell me if I'm not sounding okay. But when they extended Courtland Sutton, they kind of hit they kind of put the term of the deal right in the pocket of, basically, if he played out the deal, he'd be exiting as a 30-year-old wide receiver. He's still only 28. Like, another thing you got to factor in here, Zack, is the Broncos, they're in a rebuild. They're going to bring in a quarterback, a younger quarterback. Even if they, all their best efforts fail and they're not able to get like a J.J. McCarthy or, leapfrog somewhere up into the top 4, they're still going to draft a quarterback. And that quarterback, at some point, just like you got to feed the red meat to the hound, so to speak, eventually, when Jarrett Stidham is just stinking it up, the fans are going to demand, even if it's a third round guy, if it's a Michael Pratt, if it's a Spencer Rattler, eventually, some point in 2024, the Broncos will have little choice but to trot that dude out on the field. And you want a veteran wide receiver like Courtland Sutton, who has a history and a propensity, Zach, for making hay amidst quarterback instability. I mean, after all, the one and only Pro Bowl nod this dude has, he caught passes from 3 different starting quarterbacks that season in 2019.
I think we have to be, from a league-wide perspective, I think we have to be a little realistic when it comes to Sutton, who's an elite number 2 guy, but I think an average to above average number 1. Too much inconsistencies, drop passes. It seemed like he hasn't been the same since the knee injury. You can argue he wasn't the same since he got that big contract. And if Keenan Allen went to the Bears, Keenan Allen being a much better and more accomplished receiver for a 4th-round pick, I just pause and hesitate, Chad, at the notion that the Broncos could get anything better. And at that point, if you're facing a 4th or a 5th for Courtland Sutton, do you pull that trigger? Do you make that deal? It's iffy for me.
I wouldn't. I honestly wouldn't. And in the wake of the Jeudy deal, like in a vacuum, Zach, the Broncos probably get more than a 5 and a 6 for Jerry Jeudy. It's the fact that $13.5 million or whatever it was that he was set to earn on his 5th year that they had extended to him, that did drive down what teams were willing to offer up in exchange. So, like, if you took that away, Zach, and he was, they were looking to trade him this time last year, let's just say, or they did. Maybe the Broncos get a 3rd-round pick, maybe a 4th-round pick. Okay, if you were to tell me right now, hey, would you be happy with that for Jerry Jeudy? I'd be like, of course, absolutely. Courtland Sutton, though, like even a 4th-round pick, I don't think you could get a 3rd for him. But a 4th-round pick, like maybe the best case scenario, still, Zach, with what the Broncos are looking to achieve, I'm not sure that's worth more than just keeping him on the roster. Even if it might mean, Zach, you got to go, add a few guaranteed dollars to his contract. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, for what it's worth, that you do a John Elway circa 2019 and add $3 million of basically free money. I mean, that's a bad way to put it, but like they did with Chris Harris, they're just like, oh, you're unhappy. Here's $3 million in a contract year. And then we're going to offer you a bigger contract in the fall to return. And if you guys remember, he spurned the offer and ended up having to take less to join the Chargers. It was quite an unfortunate situation, but I'm digressing here. You can if you keep him, Sutton, you can make him happy by just increasing if he's set to make 13, Zach, and $2 million of that's guaranteed. All right, make $8 million of it guaranteed.
We got David McElrath, the Papa Bear, chiming in. So good to see you, David, as each and every night. Good evening, Broncos country. Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott. Hashtag Brock, JJ McCarthy, Rattler covering all your bases. David, I love it. Hashtag MHH for life. Buckham ×3. Denver Broncos for life. So good to see you. And I want to add one more point about Courtland Sutton, Chad. Maybe I'm misremembering, so correct me if I'm wrong. Last year, the rumor was they were holding out for a 1 for Jeudy and a 2 for Courtland Sutton, right? Something along those lines. Courtland Sutton went on. They couldn't get that, by the way. Let's assume it's a 2. And he went on to have 10 touchdowns. He had a pretty good season, made a lot of highlight reel catches. What does it say that they still couldn't move him? And he's obviously still on the block. He made waves on social media. He skipped voluntary workouts. He's obviously unhappy. And the Broncos are obviously fielding offers and probably making offers and not just, receiving them. So I just think his value is overrated a little more in Broncos country than it would be in the NFL.
David, thank you, bro. It's so good to see you. And I agree with you, Zach, on that front with Sutton. Just a few hellos here. And yeah, guys, Sunday nights were usually going to be a little bit later. Sorry. Appreciate you sticking with us. We got the Duchess in the house. We got Todd Ostendorf, Mike Edel, some OGs. We got Jason Ingalls in the house. Good to see you. This is really cool. Shout out to Barry. These commenters, Zach, before we even went live, it's so great to see the community. They're just like, hey, life goes on whether Chad and Zach are on or not. We're talking shop here, and I love seeing that. I want to shift gears here, Zach, and talk about perhaps an even more pressing issue, an interesting rumor. Well, it's really a report that triggered a couple of rumors over the weekend. But first, guys, got to bring your attention here to AG1, because the older I get, the more seriously I have to take care of my health and nutrition. And that's where AG1 comes into play. No matter what you do for a living, and I speak from experience here, it can become all too convenient to rely on coffee, to rely on caffeine for that extra energy, that focus, a little boost, but it's not so great for your body, especially if blood pressure is in any way, shape, or form an issue. And then, of course, there's the dreaded crash. With AG1, I get sustained energy. So I'm not reaching for that cup of coffee or energy drink at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And on top of that, I hate taking those big, massive multivitamins. And we all know how crucially important it is to take care of your gut health relative to probiotics. So AG1 checks all three of those boxes, and it does so in an impressive and can be life-altering way. Focus, energy, nutrition, improved gut health, all in one delicious smoothie. AG1 is next level stuff.
Trust me, Broncos country, AG1 is the supplement I trust to support my whole body health and help me feel my best. If you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs when you first subscribe. Go to drinkag1.com/huddle. That's drinkag1.com/huddle. Check it out.
Okay, I wanted to get your take on something, but first, we don't keep the Duchess waiting. Michaela Parker jumping in. Thank you so much. We love you. We appreciate you. You know this. She says, pull out your crystal ball. What are the Broncos going to do on draft day? Okay, really interesting because I want to answer this, Zach, but I think, and I'm going to say, I think you're going to see some kind of it seems like there's momentum building for a trade up. I do remain in the camp of relative certainty, and I know that's kind of an oxymoron, a relative certainty, but that the Broncos are going to emerge from round one with a quarterback. But the signs right now, Zach, are pointing to a trade up. First of all, we had George Payton talking about how on Thursday, and I'm going to paraphrase him, that if they were to identify a quarterback that could change the landscape, then they do whatever it takes to get in position to to land that quarterback. And then over the weekend, Zach, we have Tony Pauline, who, of course, he makes all of his hay during the pre-draft season. He's a draft guy and a bona fide draft insider. And he wrote the following here, and then I want you to, of course, answer for Michaela. Quote, sources tell me that, and remember, the whole story about Payton losing out on Patrick Mahomes when the Chiefs leapfrogged up 17 spots and swooped him right before the Saints were going to. So Pauline, quote, sources tell me that losing out on Mahomes has left an eternal bad taste in the mouth of Payton. Recent word inside the league is that the Broncos coach is ready to mortgage the franchise future to move up and select a quarterback Thursday night. Goes on to say, once again, there's talk the Broncos will dangle Patrick Surtain as part of a package for a quarterback. And I'll remind you guys, too, that, he broke that initially back at the Shrine Bowl, I want to say, in January. Last thing, Zach, he's saying also the apple of Peyton's eye in this effort, J.J. McCarthy. So with that in mind, you got your crystal ball for Michaela. What does it say?
Well, if the reality was the Broncos trading PS2 and multiple first-round picks to move up for McCarthy, the discourse on Twitter would be epic, Chad. I'm here for that. I got to think, Michaela, they come out of the draft, like Chad was talking about, the first round with a quarterback. There is no more important position. Sean Payton has been hitting at it for months. They've worked out many of the top 5, 6, 7, 8 quarterbacks, and obviously the need is there. My gut says they're going to try really hard to move up, like Chad was talking about, and package those picks. You need two to tango, and they might not find that dance partner. If they stay at 12, Bo Nix could be a possibility, though they could also trade down and still move back up for Bo Nix if they acquire a second-round pick. But I just don't see Sean Payton operating that way. That's a George Payton move to trade down and stockpile. That's not a Sean Payton move. Sean Payton's going to be aggressive, and one way or the other, get a quarterback on day one.
Exactly. I think the most likely thing is, even if it doesn't, Zach, end up as what we might kind of categorize as an extreme move to trade multiple first-round picks and premium guys to get a J.J. McCarthy. I mean, we've heard signs that the Patriots, you and Scott talked about this the other night, the Patriots put out some smoke signals that they're open to dealing out of number 3. But I think the most likely trade partner here is the Cardinals, simply because not only are they number 4, it's probably about where the Broncos expect, if it is indeed J.J. McCarthy, him to be available. And it just so happens that the Cardinals, Pauline mentions this too in his article, but the Cardinals could use a cornerback. So instead of, for example, Zach, let's say giving up this year's, next year's, and a 2026 first rounder to get to number 4, you give up this year's, next year's, and Surtain, because the Cardinals are here for that. They could use that. I mean, yeah, they want to stockpile picks. Great. But the Cardinals, they're going to use one of those picks at some point over the next 2-3 years, whatever they end up getting, on a cornerback, because they need a bona fide shutdown guy. And the Broncos have one that's already proven and only entering year 4. So I think the Cardinals make the most sense. I mean, even Sean Payton mentioned the Cardinals GM, Monty Ossenfort, back during the NFL owners meeting. So it's like there's something there. And then, Zach, I just want to quote this real fast. This was, the first question when the Paytons, different spelling, but Sean and George, let's just say, held court on Thursday at Broncos HQ. Of course, the first question out of the gates was, hey, is that number 12 overall pick, is it going to be used to select a quarterback? It kind of looks like you have to draft a quarterback. And I think everyone recognizes, including everyone in that room at the time, the Broncos quarterback situation is, if you're not going to go to the extreme and say the worst in the NFL, it's among the worst. So here's what Sean Payton said, quote, "Do we have to draft a quarterback? You'd say, man, sure looks like we have to draft a quarterback, and yet it has to be the right fit and the right one. If we had the tip sheets as to who everyone else was taking, it would be easier to answer that question. That's the puzzle here," close quote. And then George went on to emphasize, quote, "What we don't want to do is force it. Otherwise, we're in this position next year and the years after. You want to get the right player at 12. So, Zach, if the Broncos stay at 12, I think there's a decent chance that it's either a Bo Nix or all right. If McCarthy's gone, let me phrase this differently. When the Broncos go on the clock at 12, they don't trade up. I think there's a decent chance that they go, you know what can we get in a trade back and either move back, or they just say, you know what, we have Bo Nix ranked as like the 34th best player or whatever. All right, let's just say that. And we know we're not picking again until 76. So just like George Payton talked about also on Thursday, when it comes to reaching, yeah, NFL teams, Zach, are comfortable reaching on a player when a couple of conditions are met. One, it's at one of the cornerstone positions, right? One of the value positions, they call it quarterback, corner, left tackle, pressure players, edge, etc. And or if the value, the gap is not extreme. So if you're at 12 and you had Bo Nix, Zach, rated as your 34th best player, this is just as an example, and knowing you don't draft again until 26, that's enough of a factor, enough factors kind of converging to go, okay, we're going to go ahead and take Bo Nix. But I think it sounds like right now they're trying to find a way to get J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, we got Skater Mike popping in, $5 super. So good to see you, Skater Mike. Thank you for joining us this Sunday evening. Skater Mike goes, honestly, I think it's best for us to prepare for a quarterback to draft next year. We have tons of needs, especially offensive line. Hashtag officially start their rebuild. So if I'm reading this correctly, Chad, this is another comment in favor of punting on quarterback until 2025 and solidifying the rest of the team in the meantime. Maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but I'm not really a fan of that strategy. You got to start swinging and taking your shot at the guy, because there's no guarantee that you're going to get the guy in 2025. And all you're going to do until then is waste another season, and you can't really afford that. So I understand the need to do both. You need a quarterback, and the Broncos have plenty other roster needs, but no need comes before quarterback. It's the most important for a reason. And one more thing to tie on to the last topic, Chad, about trading up. To me, Surtain is the nuclear option. If Sean Payton absolutely has to have somebody, I would throw PS2 in. And the good thing about dangling him, and Scott and I talked about this, you and I have talked about this, the Vikings are the Broncos' biggest challenger to move up for a quarterback. From a personnel standpoint, they can't offer what the Broncos can. Pick, sure, they have 2 first-rounders this year, but they can't offer a shutdown cornerback like PS2, not even close. So if it came down to that and you want to move up, that could be the tiebreaker. Though to go to 4, I would prefer Drake May there, not McCarthy.
Look, I know yes, the Broncos are rebuilding. that kind of points to the obvious. They have a lot of roster needs, a lot of roster demands, but that to me, Zach, is not enough of a rationale to say that in what is considered to be a very deep and top heavy too. I mean, it's both deep and top heavy quarterback class. The Broncos, just outside of the top 10, are going to go ahead and punt on this class. Like, it just doesn't make sense. You know what wages you get when you make a decision like that? That which John Elway netted, well, when he passed on a quarterback in 2018 and took Bradley Chubb.
Yep.
That's what fate usually, I shouldn't say, that's what I would expect fate to deliver these Denver Broncos as currently led by Sean Payton and George Payton. I wouldn't expect it to be any different. Like, you got to make hay while the sun's shining. You already had even though you moved the needle as Sean Payton by 3 wins with a less than thrilling quarterback situation in year 1, you still missed the playoffs and you still posted a losing season. You cannot afford to just go, yeah, hey, fans, punt on quarterback and hope to see you in the fall. Hey, Patrick Smythe, yo, let's get one of those big, the pictures for the stadium-sized picture of Stidham. Let's see if that can maybe gin up some excitement. Hang that outside in power. You got that for me? Okay, cool. No, dude. He knows which way the wind blows. Like, he's a savvy cat. That's not going to happen.
You nailed it, Chad. It's a top-heavy class. I mean, people are pointing toward Shedeur Sanders in 25, but there are 5 to 7 quarterbacks in this class alone that could be future starters in the NFL, a couple of which are ideal pairings with Sean Payton. In my mind, you got to swing early, you got to swing often, and it starts this coming week.
We got Mike Edel jumping in. Good to see you, big dog. Thank you so much for the super chat. He says, good evening, Chad, Zach, and Scott. Just my take on this. I've watched a lot of NFL drafts in my lifetime. No NFL team or no team will ever tip their hand. I believe all the rumors are agent speak. Love you guys. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know for sure what is smoke and what is fire. One of the ways to kind of help maybe make sense of some of the rumors are like, would it fit? Like, when we hear things like, we've heard, for example, Zach, a lot of rumors, more than one rumor. This Pauline one is the most recent, but it's not the first that the Broncos like McCarthy. Okay. But we've also heard a lot of outside the team stuff connecting Knicks to the Broncos, not in the sense of, hey, rumor has it Broncos love Knicks, but in a, hey, Knicks fits the Broncos. Hey, Knicks seems like a pretty obvious fit for Sean Payton. So, like, to me, you got to kind of go, all right, which of these quarterbacks would seem to be the best fit for Sean Payton, and kind of also are in that conversation for top of the draft. And really, it is McCarthy and Knicks. Now, could a guy like Payton make hay with basically any of these quarterbacks? Yeah, I don't have any doubt on that. I think it might take a little bit longer depending on the quarterback, but Payton can probably make hay with any of them. But I think it's McCarthy. Round 1, like, priority, trying to get McCarthy is just, that makes sense to me based on his skill set, Zach, based on, what some of the other rumors are. It makes sense. But at the same time, one thing to think about too, Mike, is this: Sean Payton, also, like Bill Belichick, from the Bill Parcells coaching tree and that whole school of thought. And we also know how much Sean Payton studied the dynastic Patriots in terms of just, all their approach to almost everything, including the espionage fact. He uses, Zach, I would guess, educated wise, he uses a lot of the same tactics, which is, if you want to get a little something moving, you put something out there, give it to your insider guy in the media, let him float it out there and see what kind of scenarios it kicks up, because that also can reveal intentions of other teams. We know also, last thing here, Zach, sorry, I don't mean to ramble on this, and I'm going to serve it back to you. Yeah. We know also from Payton talking on Thursday, he's paying attention to this stuff, dude. He's on Twitter checking the rumors. Yeah. If it's a blue check mark, he'll see what they mocked.
Timmy in Tucson.
Exactly, dude. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, over to you.
I find it interesting that Mike brings up tipping your hand, because I made this point on Thursday's podcast. The polar opposites that Sean Payton and George Payton are when it comes to addressing the media ahead of the draft. George Payton is trying to play the ultimate game of poker and keeping his cards close to his vest, and Sean Payton's out there just blurting out, "Oh, I got a pair of aces. I got a flush." He's making it very obvious that the Broncos are targeting a quarterback, and we've said this before. If it comes down to what George Payton wants versus what Sean Payton wants, Sean's winning that battle all day, every day.
Yeah, and especially on the subject of quarterback, man, like, and there's just no doubting how badly they need one right now. The Duchess jumping in again. Thank you, Michaela. We love you. She says 12th pick, Surtain and Sutton for the 4th pick. Sounds fair, no? Well, like in a vacuum, yeah, sounds fair to me. But when a team like the Vikings are also knocking on the door, Zach, and they're maybe willing to offer, 2 first-rounders this year plus a first-rounder next year, because, like, one in the hand's worth 2 in the bush. If you can get 2 in the hand right now, that's worth even more. So if you could get 2 first-rounders on top, I mean, I'm just saying here, if you didn't have to, Zach, compete with the Vikings, maybe that's a deal that could be made. But top 5 usually comes at a premium. Not to say Surtain and Sutton aren't premium players, but usually I would think it'd take a little bit more than that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying here. They probably would defer. They would prefer the draft picks in this scenario over a player like Sutton. I don't see what value he'd bring to Arizona, who could just stay at number 4 and take Marvin Harrison Jr., a much more polished and better receiving prospect. It'd be the 12th pick, Surtain, and another first. I think Arizona would pick up the phone and listen to that offer. But as it is, Michaela, they would laugh at that. It's going to take a lot for the Broncos to move to 4.
So then you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Let's say they took that deal. Would that be worth it? Giving up Surtain and Sutton and, a 12th pick. I mean, you're just swapping a first-round pick. But if it got you your franchise quarterback for Sean Payton to develop, and it really worked out that way, I mean, we wouldn't know out of the gates. We might be able to tell early on, but would it be worth it? I would tell you that even if you had to give up 3 first-round picks, if it gave you a franchise quarterback with what you could then build around moving forward, worth it all day long. I mean, it would suck to not have those picks, but how many times do we have to be reminded that all the PS2s, all the Suttons, all the Vaughns, all the Wolves, all the Harrises, Akibs, all of those guys, if you don't have the franchise quarterback, they do not avail you in the standings. Sorry. So right now, unfortunately, Zach, the Broncos kind of have the cart before the horse in that they have some interesting pieces. I mean, they have a bona fide left tackle. He might not be a top guy, but he's a solid starting left tackle in a contract year, albeit. They have an elite corner. All right. They're lacking a pressure guy. They're lacking a blue chip pressure guy. But even if they had Von Miller in his prime right now, you're still going, 8-9, 7-10 without the quarterback. You got to get that quarterback. So it's almost like, hey, we'll take our chances. We'll get the quarterback. We'll let the chips fall. Is there like a limit to that? Perhaps there is. I'm not sure what it is.
It boils down to this. If you make a move up to the top 4 and give up a bounty of draft picks, and if that quarterback that you're drafting hits, no one is going to remember the draft picks that you gave up. But if that quarterback does not hit, everyone will remember the draft picks that you gave up. So it's like any other prospect in the draft, Chad. If you hit, you look like a genius. If you don't, you look like the GOAT, and not the good GOAT, the bad GOAT.
That's why, they talked a lot about this on Thursday, how much time they spend with the players, gathering information from coaches, acquaintances, teammates. You got to get a pretty good beat on these guys. And even Sean Payton talked about A learners, B learners, C learners, how well guys pick things up. You'd have to feel pretty confident in it. And then also, I mean, it sucks that you have to question it a little bit because he's in your division. But seeing the production that you got in the win column out of J.J. McCarthy with Jim Harbaugh, that's one thing. The fact that he then goes to the NFL and just throughout this entire offseason sings the praises of McCarthy and really is building up this kid's draft stock. I get it. He's in my division, but I'm not the only team in the league. I think that's mostly genuine what you're hearing from Jim Harbaugh in terms of how he feels about J.J. McCarthy and his no nonsense and kind of the scale of priorities we know that a quality coach like Jim Harbaugh has. That means something to a veteran coach, I'm sure, like Payton.
I mean, we're a lot higher on McCarthy than some other podcasts or other, members of the media, other members of Broncos country. We happen to think that JJ would thrive. He has a very high ceiling. Sean can work with his pocket maneuverability, his arm, his athleticism. There's a lot he can bring to the table. The only debate is he worth moving up to the top four for? That's where the argument starts and kind of ends.
Honestly, I'm not even a huge fan of JJ McCarthy. I think he's mostly untapped. Like, I do think that what we've seen from JJ McCarthy is just the tip of the iceberg. What's up, Phil? Love you, big dog. He says, all talked out, just sending some love. I feel you. Thank you, bro.
Thank you, Phil.
Appreciate you, Phil. But JJ McCarthy, Zach, it's not that I'm like fanboy, he's my favorite guy in the world. Honestly,
Sure.
I could not care less who it is. If Sean Payton and George Payton say this is our guy, that's what I care about.
Yeah.
I just know any of those 5 guys that I've already, I mean, I'll say 6, I'll include Michael Penix Jr. Any one of those guys is a better option than what you have right now in Stidham and Gucci Danucci. I mean, that's what it is.
You're right. Quarterback or bust. We got Robert Otteson joining us this evening. So good to see you, Robert, with your $5 super. Robert goes, "Hi, boys. I can't wait for the draft. Quarterback has to be our top priority. That's for damn sure. Love from Nevada, deep in Raiders country. That sucks. And don't forget to get your MHH swag. That's MHHmerch.com. Listen to Robert. He knows. Appreciate you. And let us know, Robert, who you want in the draft, what your quarterback is, your top priority."
It's so weird how Nevada did become Raider land, like as someone who grew up basically with one foot in Las Vegas, I'm here to tell you that, yeah, there was a lot of Raiders fans there, but there were a lot of Broncos fans. Basically, it was kind of a melting pot of West Coast teams, but still a lot of Broncos fans. I'm trying to remember. I want to say for a good part of my upbringing, they were getting Denver area local programming, which means Broncos were on TV, not the LA teams, not the Chargers, etc. But yeah, when you moved to Vegas, Nevada becomes quite clearly Raider country, unfortunately, or Raiderland or Raider Nation. What is it? Raider Nation? That's what it is. Raider Nation.
FTR.
Exactly. I'm not wasting any time on getting that straight. Okay, we're doing pretty good at 32 minutes, but we did start late, so we'll probably keep tonight relatively short. I just want to see. I want to get a beat. We've had some great superstars checking in. I just want to get a beat on some of the other thoughts here. Like Dan here, who says on Facebook, "I just hope the Broncos are smarter than mortgaging the future. Get your Q in 25 with the number 1 pick next year." So he's saying, like, tank. Basically, if you don't get a quarterback, you're all but tanking in 2024, which then you're really vying, Zach, for the number 1 overall pick next year. What's that QB class look like? I don't know. Again, you get into the 1 in the hand worth 2 in the bush territory, or vice versa. You just got to get your priorities straight. I disagree with this thought, Dan. I hope you've probably figured that out by now, but I do appreciate you sharing your take.
To me, there's a lot wrong with this. And yeah, Dan, I appreciate you sharing your take as well. And everyone's entitled to their, opinion of what the Broncos should do. But A, there's no guarantee that even if the Broncos tank, they are going to get the number 1 overall pick. And B, last I checked, prime John Elway or Andrew Luck or anyone isn't coming out in 2025 where you would purposely throw away a whole season after not making the playoffs for 8 of them in order to chance it on a quarterback. It's not the way you go about team building.
Lawrence, what's going on, big dog? Appreciate you. He says, "What's up, guys? I say we build the defense again and let the defense score since we have such a big advantage with the altitude. Maybe building the offense shouldn't be the main focus." Man, you guys are missing the forest for the trees on this. I love you. If you were standing right next to me or sitting right next to me right now, I'd have my hand on your shoulder. I'd say, "Dude, you're tripping. I love you, but you're tripping." That's what I'd be saying. Because, I mean, there always, Zach, is an exception that proves the rule. All right. You got the 2000 Ravens, the 85 Bears. People try to lump the Broncos of 2015 into that, but you can't. You had a Hall of Fame quarterback. The Bucks, with Brad Johnson. Those are the exceptions that people try to lean on to say you don't necessarily need a Brady, a Manning, a Breeze, a Rodgers, a Mahomes to win a world championship. Every once, and when I say a blue moon, it's a blue moon. Every once in a rare blue moon, some team just like captures lightning in a bottle, Zach. It has a great D and a quarterback that's just good enough, and they go the disc. But like it takes so many different dominoes falling perfectly for that to happen. You can't bet on it. You can't even come close to like hedging on it. John Elway thought he could. He thought he could manipulate that he was the one middle of the road quarterback away from winning it all. And it blew up in his face. He ended up very much, if not ruined. I'm not going to say he ruined his legacy, Zach, but he most certainly tarnished his legacy as the Duke of Denver with that approach. Unfortunately, you just don't move the needle, guys, in the modern league without a quarterback. It's just the way it is. Does that mean you go running around completely irrational, just, shotgun approach, hoping something sticks? No, you got to be as on point and pay attention, do your research. But once if you identify a guy or guys that click and check those boxes, you got to be willing to do what it takes to get them, because without them, you're 8-9, you're third in the AFC West, you're fourth in the AFC West. Now it's 10 consecutive losing seasons. Now it's 12. Now it's 13. When is enough? Like, Zach, I think part of it too is when you're this traumatized as a fan base, you've been through the ringer this much, and you know how bad it's been the last couple of years as a result of no ones, right? Thanks to the Russ trade, thanks to the Payton trade, you're also a lot more reticent to go getting all excited about giving up additional first-round picks to get a quarterback. I totally get that, but no risk it, no biscuit. That's the bottom line.
Lawrence, I love you, bro. I really do, and I appreciate your contributions. But this comment kind of makes me feel insane, because what you're proposing here is the definition of insanity. The Broncos have done that for 8 years, is build up the defense and let an anemic offense trot the field every single down, every single series, every single game. How has that worked out? Like Chad was talking about, third place, fourth place, no winning seasons, no playoff appearances. It's time to go all in on the offense, Chad, and that starts with the quarterback under center.
String guy, bro, what's good? You're saying, hey, it's refreshing to see you guys rooting for us to get a quarterback instead of having us trade back for Penix or Rattler. I'm definitely rooting for a quarterback, and I'm just like, I will stand up and I'll say, shame on you, Sean Payton, George Payton, if you emerge from even round one without a quarterback this year. But I don't want you to misinterpret what we're saying as blindly just saying, hey, trade up and give up the farm for a quarterback. It's not that. It's let's just take for a second, and I get like what Mike Edel was saying earlier, smoke signals. No one's just giving up state secrets willy-nilly before the draft. But let's just, for the sake of argument here, take this previous report we're talking about that came out over the weekend. Broncos willing to do what it takes, trade up, and JJ McCarthy's the guy. If that were true, then yes, I'm telling you, do whatever it takes to get that guy. If that's who you have through all your research, diligence, expertise, experience, everything that comes into play, if that's the guy, then do whatever it takes to get that guy. Now, if you're not sure, I'm right there with the rest of the guys that go, well, maybe not punt, but like move back, hedge a little bit. Don't sell the farm if you're not sure. And sure is a relative term. Very few teams are ever sure on a guy, but you get what I'm saying here, Zach.
Michaela, the Duchess, dropping in another super $4.99. Thank you so much, as always, Michaela. She goes, I don't understand the blind trust for Payton and Payton when they haven't done anything to warrant that trust. And Michaela, I feel like that's a trope you've been repeating a few times. You're more skeptical on what Sean Payton brings to the table, obviously what George Payton brings to the table. But there's not a couple of rookies, novices, terrible guys bad at their jobs. There's pros to be made for both. The case with Sean Payton is that his success in New Orleans wasn't just fueled by Drew Brees. He had experience, or he has success building up every type of quarterback, and he's one of the best play callers of this generation. George Payton, Russell Wilson, trade, contract, Hackett hiring, Randy Gregory, etc. It's all worked against him, but he's hit in the draft a lot. He has an eye for the middle rounds. He knows how to find undrafted talent. There's good traits for both, but I think ultimately, Michaela, we have to trust them because we have to trust them. We have no other option. maybe in the case of George Payton, he might be fired. He might be relieved by Sean, but Sean's here to stay. And it's his way or the highway. It's his show. He has full autonomy, full control. And we really, until he decides to leave or gets fired, we have no choice but to follow his lead, Chad.
Yeah, I can understand some how some of the bloom is off the Sean Payton rose as a result of just not, crushing fully the 2023 season. But that to me, like, I was disappointed. This time last year, we were talking about, hey, former championship quarterback like Russ, 9-time Pro Bowler entering whatever it was, year 12, and Sean Payton, that's got to be some kind of a recipe for success. Turns out that there was a lot more, rotten behind the scenes relative to Russ than we knew or realized, at least. I still am fully stoked on Sean Payton. Like, I trust him. I trust him to make this pick. That's not me like predicting or guaranteeing that he's going to be, the next Mike Shanahan for this club and like go on to bring home multiple trophies or whatever. But like, seriously, if you look across the landscape at coaches, that if you're a team that's in the quarterback market, you're still kind of floundering out in the sea without a quarterback, as the Broncos have been since Peyton Manning hung it up. You look at what coaches over this kind of span have been available or within reach of the Broncos to help you not only make the right decision on if you're going to get into the franchise quarterback market relative to the draft. I'm just glad it's Sean Payton. It's not Vic Fangio. It's not Vance Joseph. It's not Dan Quinn. There maybe are some other ones I would put on the same level, but like Kyle Shanahan, I'm sure it'd have been handy to have him helping to pick a quarterback. Sean Payton. Now, George Payton, yeah, I mean, he's lost some belief. He made a terrible head coaching hire. In retrospect only, nobody faulted George Payton at the time for making the Russell Wilson trade. But in hindsight, that's a huge, huge blemish on his GM resume, Zach. And, outside of the first round, second round, it's hard to point to a big success, I guess, and a third round pick here and there. I mean, minors, etc. But, he's not really found the gems. Even John Elway, with the help, of course, of Matt Russell and some of his different front office guys over the years, they had a sterling resume of like fourth and beyond, finding just gems, dudes that would go on. Trevathan, Malik, Julius Thomas. I mean, granted, this was early on, but you go back, we could go through it right now if we wanted to. They found a lot of mid to late round gems. George Payton, Zach, up to this point, doesn't really have that success, that track record of success as a draft artist as we get farther and farther into his tenure as a GM. But I do have faith in his ability as a GM and a talent evaluator overall. And I think, if anything, Zach, because they are kind of so different in their ultimate philosophy, like guys like us, we're saying, hey, forest for trees, quarterback, draft guys, trickle. I'm not listening to every podcast necessarily lately because of how busy I've been. You guys have seen I've missed podcasts, went on vacation, whatnot. But I'd be willing to bet dollars to donuts. They're kind of more advocating, Zach, for, hey, trade back, stockpile picks. Draft guys, that's what they're going to say. George Payton, that's his thing, right? Hey, I want as many darts as I can, etc. And Payton's, you got to kind of temper his aggressiveness with that. And they kind of balance each other. I feel good about them. I just hope they have the resolve, Zach, to do what it takes to get a Q. That's really what it comes down to.
And I'm pretty much where you're at when it comes to drafting a quarterback. At this point, I really don't care who it is. And if Sean wants him, Sean's going to get him. And we can't do anything about that. Now, if the quarterback that Sean gets hits and becomes a potential franchise guy, Sean will have been worth the contract and the adulation and the praise and the ego. And if he doesn't hit, if the quarterback busts, then he'll be judged and hopefully reprimanded accordingly, Chad. It might cost him his job. Not this year, but 2-3 years down the road.
So here's one of our favorites in the community. We met him a few times at the meet and greets. Jeremy Sean always brings interesting takes and perspectives. He says, according to Belichick, which, by the way, if Bill Belichick's going to be a guest on a podcast, who's downloading that thing on the quick? Sean Payton. But Jeremy says, according to Bill Belichick, if any information comes out this week, it's a smokescreen. If it's 12 hours before the draft or less, then it's probably real. Okay, so let's take that let's use that for now, Zach, as kind of a barometer for this weekend's rumors. If it's a smokescreen that the Broncos are willing to trade up to do anything to get JJ McCarthy, what are they trying to screen? Like, what is it they're trying to shield as their true intentions? Or maybe a better way to put it is, what, by getting that out there, are they hoping might shake certain dominoes to ultimately benefit them at 12?
The only thing I can think of is trying to get another team to come up with a bigger offer. So maybe the Raiders at 13, if they floated out there, maybe the Raiders could offer more and it would torpedo them. I really don't see a point to put disinformation, so to speak, out there, Chad, or smoke screens. And at this point, where there's smoke, there's fire. We've heard not just once, twice, 3, 4 times. We've heard probably 10 times how much Sean Payton loves McCarthy, how badly and desperate Sean Payton wants a quarterback and needs a quarterback, and he's willing to do anything it takes. And if you look at his draft history in New Orleans, that kind of confirms the suspicions. I don't think that it's a smokescreen. I think they're going to do everything they can. It might not happen. It might not come to fruition, but they're going to try their damnedest to move up for one of the top guys.
Thing is, like, I don't believe the Broncos. I think the Broncos are reasonable and realistic enough to know that if their heart, let's say that as far as first round, they've got only 4 guys with a grade, and it stops with last guy's McCarthy. I don't see how that avails you putting out a smoke screen that you're interested in trading up. But then again, Zach, if you just want to make sure, Nix is going to be there anyway.
Right.
In real time, I'm trying to think about what would the ulterior motive be. Scott, you're tell me what you think. Lawrence jumping in again. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts on the new jersey leaks. In my opinion, I got a Champ Bailey jersey at a flea market long ago that's orange, gray, and black that I think could have been better. Anyone have the Broncos front office P.O. box? Yeah, so I did check that out today, in fact. I was checking that out. I was actually going to write about it, but, jerseys and this and that stuff like that is like my least favorite thing to sit down and spend my time as a writer.
Same.
Cranking out on the keyboard. When it's actual news, you guys need to know, and I will write it. But stuff like that, I was like, nah. Benjamin Albright, I know on Twitter, relative to what you're talking about here, Lawrence, says, look, I've seen something, because he's actually employed by KOA, who is owned by the Broncos, all that. He says, I've seen something. What I've seen, that ain't it. So he's either being a good soldier and trying to offer a little bit of a smoke screen himself, which I don't think is the case in this situation, or that's not it. So we'll find out tomorrow, right? 22nd. Isn't that the unveiling? So we'll know by this time tomorrow.
Yes, sir. And just like with the draft, I'm so happy that we're finally going to have some resolution, because I'm getting tired of speculating about it, Chad. And Lawrence, I'm not the best person to ask about jerseys. I'm not the biggest carer in the world of what they wear. I hope the fan base does like it, but more importantly, it's what they do Thursday in the draft, and hopefully come out of that with their new quarterback of the future.
All right, guys, we are about out of time. I'm just jumping in here real quick to see if there's anything interesting that we may have missed in the chat, and I'm sure we have. There's a lot of conversation tonight. Okay, here's at least a theory, all right, from Ostendorf. Zach, what if the Vikings' true target is Drake May, and they trade up to number 3 to get him? That would leave us McCarthy at 4. Now, I'm not sure if, Zach, this is in response to, the whole smoke screen. What's the incentive for the smoke screen? But generally speaking, if McCarthy's there at 4, because he's going to be the expectation, Zach, by and large. And, mock drafts are never perfectly right. But for the most part, the league expects McCarthy to be there at 4 anyway, whether the Vikings trade up or not, right?
Yeah, I've heard this rumor too that might not be JJ that they're moving up for or acquiring that extra first round pick for. It's Drake May, and we don't know until we know. Even if this were to happen, though, Chad, and McCarthy was there at 4, you still have to be wary of another team jumping to 4, like the Raiders, the Giants. There's some others as well. And you have to also work out a deal with Arizona that's not going to bend you over a barrel. There is a bridge too far, I believe, Chad. Like 3 first-round picks and PS2 is a bridge too far. So it still would take some work to get that done, even if JJ is still available.
So let's say Nix is the apple of Payton's eye. Jeremy's saying if Minnesota's nervous that the Broncos might move up, then they move up for JJ. And then the Giants, who pick at 6, pick someone else because that would be too high for Bo Nix, thus dropping him to the Broncos, Zach, at 12. Maybe that would be, of course, Jeremy, under the assumption that that's really, and you could be right on that because there's been, like, I'll quote my part here, where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's been a lot of buzz about Nix to Denver. So you could be onto something there. Let's try and remember that in the final analysis when whatever happens Thursday night. I want to look back on this theory of Jeremy's. Mike Edel, okay, and thank you again, bro. He says, shoot your shot. Who are the Broncos taking in the first round? And I saw this super chat right before I saw the Jeremy thing, and I was going to answer this the way I'm about to answer it before I saw the Jeremy thing, trust. But if I had to bet on it right now, or just like shoot my shot, I got to get on record, which I get it. I'm talking head up here. I got to go on record. I would hedge on Bo Nix at 12. What's your answer?
I was going to say the same. I mean, my brain and my heart are telling me two different things. My brain says Bo Nix, and my heart says they're going to move up somehow, some way for McCarthy or Drake May. But the point is, is the same end result. The Broncos come out of the first draft or the first round of the draft with a quarterback. So I'm with Chad. I think Bo Nix is the guy.
Okay, I think last one here, and then we're dipping out. Danny, thank you, buddy. You saying showing support tonight, guys. Listen and hope you guys' night is going good. Talk more after the draft. Yes, sir. Definitely going good. Shout out to Nick Hale. What's up, buddy? Is there a chance for a Hall of Famer in this draft out of the quarterback class? I mean, I don't know, dude. I don't know about that. I mean, it's hard enough to predict whether a guy's going to, not only be a starter, like go on to be a legit starter, but a franchise guy and then a Pro Bowl guy. And then I don't know. I don't really see it. I know it was said kind of with tongue in cheek in 2018, the Hall of Fame quarterback class, but none of those guys are quite yet on a pace to like match what the 83 class did or even forget who brought this up, the 04 quarterback class, Eli, Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, 83, Marino, or Elway Marino, Jim Kelly, right? So I don't know. I couldn't answer that with any, like, even a modicum of confidence, my friend.
I don't think so. I mean, as of now, but I could tell you one thing, in my opinion, the Caleb Williams, Patrick Mahomes comparisons will not hold water.
No.
I don't see the same player. I don't see a Mahomes 2.0. So we'll see, Judd.
But guys, love you. We got a few messages and then we're dipping on out of here.
Tremendous installment, as always, of the Mile High Huddle podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on Twitter at the MHH Pod. You can follow the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle, Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking each and every podcast, check out mhhmerch.com and get you some. If you haven't, please drop us a like at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. You can find us on Instagram at mile_high_huddle. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some merch each and every single month. But if anything, y'all, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
Man, I'm just what Jeremy said really has me thinking. And, we've been talking so much all offseason about Bo Nix. If that, going back to the Belichick thing, if it's before the draft, at any point besides the last 12 hours before the draft, it's a smokescreen. If it's inside 12 hours, then it's probably real. To me, that points to the Broncos are just doing whatever they can, Zach, to make sure Bo Nix or Michael Penix are there. But I got to think it's Nix, not Penix. So maybe start kind of getting your minds right on that. We'll see. we'll see. But much love and respect to the great Super Chat superstars and supporters tonight. The Duchess, Michaela Parker, David McElrath, Skater Mike. We got Mike Edel. We got Phil McLaughlin, Robert Otteson, Lawrence Rivera. We got also Danny Powers. Much love and respect. Thank you guys. And to each one of you who are in the chat, helping keep the conversation going. We love it. You guys are MHH. Zach and I just work here. So thank you guys. Can't wait to talk to you tomorrow. And, we'll be able to do some reaction to the new jersey reveal, even if there's no further, interesting news that breaks relative to the draft. Zach, at least we'll have that to sink our teeth into tomorrow night.
Yes, sir. As you like to say, a scratch and sniff. So we'll definitely sink our teeth into that and our noses. Be there for that tomorrow night. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.